We want to make sure that if we say that this will help you be a more confident caregiver, or help you understand finances, or help you with stress, that it actually works and that it's consistent and it works for everyone. So my research is in that area, making sure that we have programs that are practical and impactful. They make a difference in the caregiver's life. So I'm not, over here designing programs without the caregivers. I always listen to I wish I had known, I wish someone had told me, and then we take those wishes and try to turn them into programs.
Did you know that in 2020, there were 53 million caregivers in the United States? And by 2025, this number is expected to grow to 62.5 million. 73% of these caregivers also have a job. They are called working caregivers, and they are invisible because they don't talk about their caregiving challenges. Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees, is a podcast that will show you how to support working caregivers. Join Selma Archer and Zack on the Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast as they show you how to support working caregivers.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are listening. We thank you. This is the Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast. Thanks for being here. I'm Zack.
And I'm Selma Archer.
Hey, Selma, how are you?
I'm great. I'm excited about our guest today.
Oh, well, then let's get right into this.
Well, we have with us Dr. Donna Benton, who is the director of the Family Caregiver Support Center at the University of Southern California. Welcome, Dr. Benton.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Hello, Dr. Benton.
Well, we are going to pick your brain.
Oh, dear. I hope you have a thimble around.
Someone with your level of experience in the caregiver space and the advocacy work that you do, we are just thrilled to have you join us and talk about some of those things with us today. So if we can just get started, my first question to you is, tell us something interesting about the place where they live.
Okay. Well, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, which tends to be a novelty. But within my neighborhood in LA, we are, according to all the maps and stuff, we are the most diverse neighborhood in my council district. So we have the most income diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, food diversity, housing diversity. I mean, it's really interesting that we're kind of a microcosm of the rest of LA, and I actually live in Los Angeles, the city of.
Nice. I don't think I've met very many people that are actually born in LA.
I know.
Wow.
It's really a unique. Every time I go, it's like, oh, I'm a true native from a city.
Wow. I was there just a couple of years ago because my daughter-in-law is from LA and her parents live there. And I'm just going to do a shout out. It's their anniversary today to my in-laws. So happy anniversary, in-laws. But
happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
But I loved LA, and I will have to check out your neighborhood the next time we come because I'm a big food eater, as you can see.
Great.
Yeah, tell.
So if we can get started with the substance of our conversation, Dr. Benton and I had the pleasure of doing some advocacy work on the Hill a couple months ago at the National Caregiver Summit in Washington, D.C. And actually, you were, Dr. Benton, you were the most experienced caregiver advocate on our team. So we kind of all look to you for guidance and, and support and helping us calm down our nerves a bit. But I want to ask you, can you just share with us how you got involved in caregiver advocacy and the work that you do?
You know, like many people, it starts personal. Having cared for and been a caregiver to grandparents and parents. And so I knew over time, I always felt like when I would talk to other people who didn't realize that they were family caregivers, that we needed to pull together. Because once I started learning the statistics, that 1 out of every 4 households probably has caregiving, and that it's common across every culture, every income, every ethnic group, every geographic group, that there's more people caring for family members and friends than anybody else who's caring for as we get older. So that's how I got started. It starts with the personal, then you kind of learn the demographics, and then you start talking to people. And I realized that family caregivers, because we tend to be invisible, because we're just a mom, or if that's my sibling, or it's my grandmother, we don't tend to think about ourselves. We think about the person we're caring for, but we don't realize that if we don't care for ourselves, or we do, but we don't really kind of take it to heart as much. If we don't care for ourselves, we're not going to be there to fulfill the promise that we want, which is to keep that person comfortable, safe, respected in the home. And so that's when I began to think, it would be really nice if we did more advocacy and let people know that, yes, you're relying on us, but we are more than assistive devices. We need to be respected, and we need things that will make our lives easier and help us balance our work, which is what this show is about, our work with what we want to do for our families. And that it's so common that we need to start to bring it forward.
Wow, that's great. And the beauty of that is that you were able to take your personal, journeys of caregiving into your work, into the job that you do. That's really unique. That's fantastic.
So Dr. Benton, Selma and I were very happy and privileged to meet you at the Caregiver Nation Summit, which is hosted by Jason Resendez and the National Alliance for Caregiving. It was our first time. Was that your first time, or have you been before?
No.
Well, this was with that group, my second time.
Okay.
But I've done advocacy on the Hill and locally, in California, a few more times than that.
Well, we really, really were just amazed by the advocacy work that's being done and the people that we met. I think you were one of three, in particular, individuals who were affiliated with universities and that have family caregiver centers in their universities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Dr. Ben? I mean, why, first of all, does a university feel like they need to do that? And second, why are you associated with them? What do you do for them?
That's really wonderful. It's like, why would a university have a family caregiver program? So the USC School of Gerontology, which is where our program is located, it really started out because they recognized the importance of their students having really practical experience in the community and what was going on in the community. Even more so when our program started, and we were one of the first in the nations to be part of the California Caregiver Resource Centers. And the university, as far as the School of Gerontology, realized that because there was a focus on dementia, older adults, and family caregivers who are usually younger, but it really went across the lifespan. And that's what gerontology is about. It's understanding the interaction of the lifespan. The other thing is, when the program started, which was well before I started, the program is going on its 40th year, and I've been there about 28 of those years. When it first started, it's also focused on mental health because of the stress and that often accompanies some people when they're feeling isolated, alone, or depressed because of caregiving, and particularly those who are caring for someone with dementia. So the mental health aspect was very important. And so that's how the School of Gerontology could bring all of the learning that we understood around how to have programs that are really the best for stress management. That's where Gero. So there was you would have the practical learning for students. We serve all of LA County, and we're able to bring actually innovative practices to this topic. And also, so we learned and we could listen back from the community and replicate those practices out in the community.
Wow. And thank you for sharing all that. And by the way, 25 plus years, that's incredible. You've been affiliated with the university.
Yeah.
What specifically would you say your day-to-day, what you work on, just so our listeners can have a better idea?
Yeah. So I'm an associate research professor, and the director of the local Caregiver Resource Center in California. But I really work on bringing programs that are what's called evidence-based, meaning that if we are helping somebody and we're doing an education program or a training program, we want to make sure that if we say that this will help you be a more confident caregiver or help you understand finances or help you with stress, that it actually works and that it's consistent and it works for everyone. So my research is in that area, making sure that we have programs that are practical and impactful. They make a difference in the caregiver's life. And then I have to measure that. So there's always evaluation, which is what schools do. You know, we evaluate and then it helps others replicate it. So if we find something that works or doesn't, because, you know, sometimes we think, oh, this will work. And then you find out, no, that's really not helping anybody. We want to let people know so that you don't waste money and funds. And what's the best thing out there? So we've contributed a lot to the research in the field, developing programs and bringing new things to caregivers in the community across the board and across the lifespan.
So does just so that I'm clear, does your research at all include issues around the actual care recipient as well, or just for caregivers?
I tend to focus on the caregiver because it will transfer over to the care recipient.
Okay.
So I look at the relationship, like how can you improve communication with the person you're caring for? So that's both people. How can you find better ways to control your sense of frustration so that we don't end up harming the person we're caring for? How do we help our finances and know what kind of programs we can seek out that can help so that we can work and also stretch our funds a little more? Because, you know, there's not a lot of funding for a lot of the services that are needed. So, yeah, we do a lot of different ways. And then what's the best way to get information? You know, we talk to caregivers. Caregivers are part of all of our, the researcher and evaluation and program implementation. They tell us what they want. So I'm not, you know, over here designing programs without the caregivers. The caregivers tell us, you know, I always listen to I wish I had known. I wish someone had told me. And then we take those wishes and try to turn them into programs.
And did you say, Dr. Benton, that these services, which are amazing because education is exactly what caregivers are looking and wanting and needing, are these services specific for a geographical area? Is that what you said? Or can anybody tap into these?
Well, you know, times have changed. And fortunately, more people can get online. And so we've moved a lot of the programs that used to just be in person. We've been able to modify them so that they can be done one-on-one or in a group online. So we have those programs that work both in person, online, but when they're online, anybody can tap in.
And last question, again, because we can probably talk about this. I'm fascinated by universities that are focusing on this, putting their resources in this, and USC 40 years. Wow. You know, hats off and the trends that you've seen. Our listeners are usually like HR managers, leaders, employees. How would someone know about this? Let's just say a California resident who's an employee at company A, and they're stressed and they're dealing with this, and maybe their company's not really on top of this and not sharing it. How would they even know to tap into you guys?
That is a challenge. If they've recognized that they need help or services, many times our referrals are coming through HR departments. So if an HR person knows that, hey, we have something, you know, like we have something for childcare, but we don't have anything for elder care. They might say, oh, okay, let's call the Caregiver Resource Center. That's how they may know, because it's a statewide program. Or let's call we also have contracts with the area agencies on aging, and they're national. So most of because we're affiliated with those area agencies on aging in California, they would give a referral, and so people could get referred that way. We have discharge planners from hospitals. but particularly in working environments, we also offer workshops. So we'll go to, wherever company will invite us, and we can do an educational session so that people know that, hey, this is there. And, so if a company wants to offer a workshop or sponsor, say, we'd love to sponsor a support group for our team members. We'd love to sponsor a 2-week education program, or we'd love to sponsor this particular training. A company can do that. And then that's kind of would work for helping people in their work environment. Because if you have employees who are happy, they'll be more present instead of being present but not present.
Do your workshops operate on a national level so that employers nationally can access those programs?
If they call,
if they call, you will come.
The call will come. There's a price, but yes, yeah, because we have some funding that are for people who, your tax dollars at work, and that's your area, your AAAs and your state of California programs. But for companies, certainly we are more than willing to work with companies to bring workshops that would benefit their employees, the employers. Many of the employers are caregivers. There's so many caregivers at companies who, again, are often very invisible because sometimes people are afraid to say that they have this, responsibility. People are used to saying, "Oh, I'm a parent, and now, I have to go to an appointment because we have a homework or we have to go to school and talk to the teacher about something." And employers are kind of used to that, but they're not so used to elder care related issues and having to go to, say, a doctor's appointment or something for your family member who, and they may say, "Oh, but can't your parents do that themselves?" Because, it's like, well, those are adults. Why do you have to care for them? And so we're used to childcare, but not the kind of elder care. So we have to keep employers aware that just what you're doing for childcare, we would love to see, like we used to have daycares and senior cares that were supported by companies.
This is why the three of us are getting along so well. I mean, you're speaking our language, and invisible is really our driver here to try to help people become more visible. Just one other quick question. I mean, like I said, we could talk about USC all day. This silly question, probably. Is this program offered to the employees of USC? Is it a benefit by any chance?
It's not a benefit. I mean, they can call, and we certainly get employees, but USC, unfortunately, it does have a good internal HR department that's providing the services that we do, but we also work with them to do workshops. Yeah. So we have that. I'm there at USC. They're our fiscal sponsor, and they're the one in the School of Gerontology, and clearly we work together. But, they have a very good employee support, and they had an entire caregiver page. And those were in the early days. That's what we helped build and understand. And then USC has been able to adopt it and expand it across more people than what we could actually handle for our program.
Selma, I usually do this at the end of the show, but I got to do this now, if you don't mind. We like to throw a challenge to our listeners. Here's the challenge that I'm going to throw out there. Who's going to be the first HR leader that reaches out and inquires, no strings attached, no obligation, but inquires about an educational program for their organization? Who's going to be the first one to reach out? Dr. Ben said there's a price, but I guarantee it's probably a lot more affordable than you think. Yeah. So who's going to be the first? And we will put all her contact information in the show notes.
Absolutely. So just a question, stepping back a little bit in terms of the advocacy work, because, you and I worked on the Older Americans Act, advocating for that. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the other, advocacy opportunities that you're involved with?
Yeah.
On a national level?
Sure. So, the Older Americans Act, one of the primary reasons that I was there advocating is that part of the Older Americans Act has what's called the 3E National Family Caregiver Support Program. And that's part of the Older Americans Act. So it became very critical that we have passage of that piece within the Older Americans Act, along with all the other supports, because everything in the Older Americans Act helps both the person who has the disease and the person who's caring for them. And the key piece is we really want to help advocate for like work-life balance policies. And so that's another area that we work very, very hard on, like paid family leave, caregiver discrimination, understanding easier ways to get unemployment insurance, things that really help. And then what can, businesses do to make it a little easier for somebody with flexibilities and work schedules, things like that. And we don't want to have everything legislated, right? So part of in working with businesses is not everything needs to become a law. But if you work together between the business and understanding what your employees need, because the one thing is we want to help you reduce turnover and inefficient, and you can do that by having people that are committed. And they found that if there's flexibility, when there's good leave policies around any kind of family care, you actually have higher rates of productivity and for companies, because people are committed. There's not going to be as much turnover and people are happier. And there's more trust built between the employee and the employer when people understand that we all have some family issues, and you can do that in an equitable way across all your employees. And it impacts all age groups. All your employees' age.
Just like Rosalind Carter said. So, in follow up to what you just stated, what do you see as the major challenge for employers going into 2025?
I think the biggest challenge is that they're going to have to find a way to support programs that are both public and private, that they can benefit their employers. So having programs that allow for home and community-based services, understanding the importance of those programs for their employees because it keeps them in the workforce. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges, because a lot of the safety net programs, if they go away, then people may have to choose between being employed and caring for a loved one. And that's just a choice that nobody should be forced to make.
Yes, and it happens.
And if there are good combinations of public and private support, then you don't have to make that choice.
And that's what you help educate employers on?
Yes.
That's great.
You don't want to force people into a choice like, do I have to work or do I have to care for my mom during her last years of life?
Yes.
And I got to tell you, unfortunately, and especially impacting women, that is more common than we think. I am part of a shout out to Liz O'Donnell in the Working Daughter private Facebook group. She has over 10,000 members, and I'm the honorary working dude. I'm allowed to hang out with this gang. They've helped me significantly with my caregiving with my mom, and it's a place to vent. It's a place to ask questions. But I got to tell you, Dr. Ben, what you just said, I read it and I just cringe. But there are so many times where a member will say, I had to quit. I can't, there's no way I could do my job and take care of this. And I'm financially strapped. And, we really hopefully got to do better. We got to do better. On that note, and you mentioned this already, Dr. Ben, childcare, we've come a long way. I'm not going to age us, but Selma and I both worked in corporate in the 80s. Where still, everyone thinks maternity leave and family medical leave has been around forever. It wasn't. And even when it was first introduced, it took forever for it to actually become a law. And then even then, it took a while for corporation cultures to adjust to it, right?
Right.
So what, with all your experience and tools that you have available, what could employers be doing like this year to try to speed things up a little bit, because there is a caregiver crisis. It's on the horizon, if not here already. And so just, I don't know, do you have some other suggestions, or what can they do now? Because it's not easy to create a
Yeah.
culture of care, right? So,
Well, I love that, as you said, a culture of care. And I think part of that is businesses can help expand the definition and take away the kind of siloing of, oh, only a wife, only a spouse and can be a caregiver, or only the adult child or grandchild. Well, let's just kind of open it up, because we know that it's a family of care. So can't we have care being done because you have a strong relationship? So corporations can take down those artificial who is a caregiver, or who can, be defined as a caregiver, and push for a broader definition, and understand that it's that relationship of care for the family.
I love that. As you heard dogs barking earlier, we're huge dog lovers, but I got to tell you, I could easily show you an employee whose dog becomes seriously ill. Also, that's care, right? At the end of the day. So I love what you said, Dr. Ben, and I hope as corporations start adjusting their definition and broaden it, all caregivers need to be considered and supported, future as well, future caregivers. Yeah. Thank you.
And recognize that it's going to be, each caregiving situation feels a little different. And so it's not that but there are just some common things. And if you can bring education to a person, if you can give that flexibility to people, understand that, sometimes there's this fear, it's like, oh, well, if we give everybody 5 days of paid leave, or they get 5 days of sick time, everybody's going to use it. Research has shown that people can underuse it once they know that it's available. Mm-hmm. That not everybody takes the full time. It's also so important to allow people to understand that if you take sick time for a family member, that is not the same thing as a vacation.
Amen to that.
Forcing people to use their vacation time as like, oh, well, yeah, you can do this, but now it's got to go on your vacation time. If you're using your vacation time to care for a family member, they didn't get a rest. So you're not getting a rested worker when they come back, like if they went away and actually had a break and weren't working. So if they can help with that, that would be wonderful. To understand that sick time is sick time, vacation time is vacation time, and help people don't call family caregiving part of your vacation time.
I'm going to mess up this quote, but somebody had shared this once with me, and it stuck with me. Somebody said to me, many times employees on their personal time are working. So what's wrong with employees spending personal time at work and getting paid for that, right? At the end of the day? I mean, it makes sense if you think about it.
Balances out. Yeah.
That's right.
Dr. Benton, you mentioned early on that you talk to caregivers and you find out what it is that they need and what it is they want. And if I had known now what I didn't know at the beginning of my journey, can you share with our listening caregivers some tips about, some of those voids that they may not know, but they're going to come up against?
Okay. One of the things that people always say is, I wish I had known that there was somebody that I could talk to about my caregiving experience. So knowing that, having more support groups, peer talk to, but to reach out to, that there are in every state, there is somebody within, like an area agency on aging, assuming that the Older Americans Act gets passed. Yes. That they can reach out to. So they always wish that they had someone that they knew they could ask questions of. They also wished more often that they understood the importance of taking a break, and that it's not selfish. Mm-hmm. That saying that I need a break, or what I call respite, both physically, mentally, that it's not only is it not selfish, it is essential. Mm.
Yes.
That it is, if you don't do it, you are going to burn out and you won't be there for the long run that you want to be there. And you won't have the patience. You'll do all the things, like your patience will be gone. And then everything else around you starts crumbling. So they always say, I wish I had understood that me taking a break was not a selfish thing, and that they didn't, blame themselves for actually saying, I need a break.
That's a mic drop right there. That's a mic drop. That's awesome.
I'm just saying what the caregiver said. I wish I knew.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that always stand out for me.
And that's true. That's true for me. You said exactly what I would have answered that question. Those are the two things. And I was so bad, I even went to respite with my mom. When she went to respite care, I would go with her to make sure I wasn't getting any rest.
Right.
But I thought that was selfish. Just like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Benton, for being here with us and sharing all the wonderful work that you do. I had no idea, of everything that you were involved with. This is fantastic information, not just locally, but on a national level as well. So thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your work.
I really appreciate that you have this podcast for working caregivers and the employers, because the majority of people are working while they're giving care. And thank you so much for inviting me on this podcast to have this wonderful discussion with you.
And I want to remind our viewers and listeners that challenge: who is going to be the first person to reach out to Dr. Benton and just inquire about doing an educational program? Trust me, it will be one of the best moments of conversations that you've ever had in terms of starting your culture of care. Thank you, Dr. Benton.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to catch new episodes of Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast, every other Tuesday. Please also visit our website, invisibleemployeeadvocates.com, to subscribe to our newsletter, purchase our book, and learn more about how we can help you strengthen your workplace to become more supportive of working caregivers.